Here we have an area where the much touted system of checks and balances hasn't worked, is not working. And if you want to know what you can do about that, well, since you ask, remember the only thing you can really do about this legally is the impeachment of a Supreme Court justice. And certainly that is getting to be perhaps overdue. In other words, we have had one case back in 1805 of a Supreme Court justice. It was an associate justice appointed by George Washington, who was impeached. However, he was not removed. He was not convicted, and he therefore stayed on the court until his death in 1811, I believe. This is Samuel Chase. Samuel Chase was, first of all, he was a Jeffersonian, but he was appointed to the court by Washington. He evolved into a Federalist, and I think a rather reactionary one. And what he wanted was to apply the Alien and Sedition Acts of John Adams, right, during the French Revolution. He wanted to have a certain printer kept in jail or have him convicted. And he made this pretty clear when he was acting, as they often did then. They would act as circuit justices or district justices according to need. So this guy was impeached. One of the leaders, one of the managers of the impeachment was the famous Randolph of Roanoke. And as you see, it took place under Thomas Jefferson, but he was impeached but not convicted. Some would say that was key to having an independent judiciary. I'm sure that was valid at the time. But I think people should just remember this, right? That we have not impeached a Supreme Court justice for a long time. You know, this might be something in the future. Of course, as of today, it's totally utopian because of the House of Representatives and the Senate. Makes no sense to even talk about it, except to remind people that this does exist, right? I mean, of course, there was in the 50s and 60s, among racists and reactionaries, there was a huge brouhaha about impeach Earl Warren, because Earl Warren was considered by these reactionaries and racists to be the main author of the Brown versus Board of Education of 1954, which said segregation is unconstitutional, separate but equal is inherently unequal, and therefore you have to integrate the schools and other such facilities with all deliberate speed. So they responded with the bumper stickers, which you saw all over the place, right? Impeach Earl Warren. But that's a long time ago, so people have forgotten about it. But again, right now, this is purely theoretical utopia. So there's our Supreme Court rundown. Stay tuned during the summer. We're hoping that the fates are kind to Justice Kennedy. We wish him good health and long life. And they'll be back in the first Monday of October. So one ironic comment came today from Senator Hirono of Hawaii, and she, I think with a certain historical accuracy, compared that opinion down at the bottom of the main opinion. There's this obiter dicta stuff coming from Alito, from Thomas, and from Gorsuch, right, who has now gravitated, right? They've formed a clique already, and they're all signing together. She said these were, according to Senator Hirono, the three horsemen of the apocalypse. And of course, we remember that the original saying was the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? Not just in the famous engraving by Albrecht Dürer from the early 1500s, but the four horsemen was applied to four ultra-reactionary Republicans who were on the Supreme Court in 1936 and 1937, and who were insisting on invalidating, out of, I think, 9 main New Deal measures, these characters struck down 7 of them. It was beginning to become a constitutional crisis, right? That you had these reactionaries, as Roosevelt called them, 9 old men. Today we have 9 diverse oligarchs, but we still have them. Same. The result is unfortunately sometimes the same. That's from Hirono. The three horsemen of the apocalypse, and if Kennedy doesn't hang on, it might be a fourth, depending. Notice Chief Justice Roberts doesn't want to be out in front on these things, right? He is a much more clever operator. He doesn't want the true partisan class nature of the Supreme Court to be obvious, right? That's probably why he declined to invalidate Obamacare the first time around and why he does other things, right? He wants to blur the reactionary profile because he realizes that a lot of their evil work is done in opinions that don't attract that kind of attention. So what it shows is if you want to get something out of the Supreme Court, you've got to put the public pressure on. And then we have this traditional saying, which actually turned out to be true in the Roosevelt instance, and that is there was a comic character in the old days, right, in the 20s and 30s, Mr. Dooley. Mr. Dooley was like this, sage of the populist wisdom. It was some kind of a newspaper column or even a comic strip, I think. So Mr. Dooley said, the Supreme Court follows the election returns. Okay, followed the election returns. And with Roosevelt, he eventually ground them down. He tried supplementing the court, packing if you want, but fine, giving them a chance to renew themselves. That didn't work, but eventually he created an atmosphere where the Supreme Court caved. One retired, one died. He got to appoint some new ones. You got a new Supreme Court, right? So that was key. But I think what Roosevelt did at that point was absolutely legitimate. And the people who opposed that, I would say, were very, very short-sighted because there's always the danger of a runaway Supreme Court. Now, we don't quite have that yet, but if certain things could change very quickly, and we might have it. So get ready for that, right? Go back and read the story.